Your laptop doesn't have a can't
Built-in camera?
yeah.
No, I have a mobile camera unit that I actually have never used, but I got it to help with my teaching because I teach 2 classes at MSTC. And so they gave me a camera to use. It is sitting in my desk. And then I have I've never tried it, but the yeah, the computer, my work computer does not have a camera because I'm not clinical.
Oh, that
So
makes
they so yeah, I figured that out after all like the NPs and PAs and RNs I work with, they all have cameras, and even my registered dietitian has a camera.
yeah.
I don't have a camera. So
That's funny.
it is funny.
And then right now they're realizing like, oh shit, we should have given Derek a laptop with a camera because we have all these remote meetings now.
Yeah, it is well, and then even like some of my other wellness team members, they are on paper they're health and wellness specialists. They don't have cameras on their computers, and now they're being asked to do virtual at coaching from home. They don't have cameras.
Yep.
So now the system has to go find cameras to give them to do their coaching.
Yeah. It's
Could have been solved. Could have been
right.
solved.
Could have been. There. I was just reading an article for. It was looking at. So well, before I jump into that, let's just introduce. We'll introduce the podcast episode. So, Team Early as Fuck podcast. We've got Derek Bell from the Highway to Well podcast on, and it's been a hot minute. We're gonna, in the light of all of the craziness, the coronavirus, the social distancing movement, cocooning, all that good stuff. We're talking about remote wellness today, and going back to what I was just going to talk about, I was reading an article about the state of handicap accessible programs prior to this. So if a person couldn't go to the workplace, if they couldn't attend a workshop, they couldn't get CECs, if they couldn't go to the workplace, they couldn't have a job, right? Like all of these places were like, oh no, we don't do work from home. And now all of these places are like, we're making you work from home. So the person that was writing this article was talking about how they had been removed from previous positions because in light of their MS, it was made impossible for them to like make it up all the stairs at the facility. And you know,
Yeah.
so it's been interesting to see the 180 in like every profession, every um, yeah, I was stick with that. Every profession across the board has had to completely reevaluate how they go about conducting their business, their systems, their services, and it's changed how we've had to communicate as people for sure.
Yeah, it's safe to say that the entire structure of work in most business models have just completely been deconstructed, and we're we're in this infancy phase of pivoting and changing and figuring out that that is a massively complex issue across the board. I mean, it's over the past week, it's just been mind numbing, the transition and changes in work, and normally transitions for the most part happen at such a slower rate that we can accommodate and learn, grow, test and fail, learn, go back again. We don't have that opportunity right now. And the ones that are at the advantage have been the ones that have been working independently or at home for a while. But now they're even working with groups of people who are used to working together, that now all of us are in the same boat. So I think it's just a we're in this shared um, world of having to figure this out, and doing so at such a hyper rate that um, I think I think we're learning how important empathy and patience and allowing failure to happen so that we can continue to work together and learn from all the different avenues that we need to. Um, it it's also been interesting because I don't think by any means that we were prepared for what this means. And I mean, and I don't mean COVID-19. I mean, I'm not talking about public health and the myriad of all the different avenues we could talk about regarding the actual, virus and spread and all the different measures that are being taken to try to control it. But we're sending such a massive amount of people to go work at home, and that means they're disrupted and they're displaced, and we haven't a clue about the mental toll that is going to take. I've been thinking a lot about. There's a good friend of mine, Sean Foy, who's been the one of the leaders for years in the wellness field, talking about what we've been doing in the past hasn't really worked. In part and parcel, it works when we talk about trying to mitigate health risk, and especially in worksite wellness, we spend all of our time, energy, and money focused on risk conditions because those are medical conditions that we can try to impact, and if we impact those, then we create an ROI, and everyone's hell-bent on ROI, that makes the most sense, even though it's not really what we should be doing. I mean, in the big picture, like that's in this whole condition, the condition the world is in, I hope above all else, it catapults these incredibly fruitful wellness conversations that we've been having, but we haven't really dug in deep on them because they haven't involved the business metrics of wellness. And here we are in a world where all business metrics, we might as well just throw them out the window. Like, we're all just surviving. Mm-hmm. And I keep thinking about this quote that Sean Foy uses all the times in his talk. It's a guy named Viktor Frankl. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Frankl.
Very familiar.
Okay. So, yeah. So, he was a neurologist and psychologist and a Holocaust survivor. And he went through a lot, and he learned about the human condition. He wrote incredible books about the search for meaning. And he has this quote that Sean uses often, and it's, "Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how." And that has been like, these are conversations we've been having, but the gravity for it hasn't really been there for everyone, like, until now. So, and I hope that in the entirety of this whole movement, in the tactics of working from home, and the tactics of how to help small businesses survive, and the tactics of how to be a company that produces things when you have limits on the amount of people that can work, or you have to worry about screening every single person who comes through your doors. Those are things that we're going to figure out. We're going to have to figure out, and we're going to have to live with more conditions on health. Okay, so those are the tactical part of it. But I hope that this whole period helps us reflect and understand that these conversations that we've been having in wellness, the whole idea that finding your purpose helps you live a better life, that understanding your why can help you get through these situations, will gravitate to the top, so we can actually really talk about living well in our world. And this isn't new. Like, the crazy thing about this type of work is that this has been what, like, deep in the wellness field, we've been talking about for a while, and oftentimes it's been called fluff, or there's been a lack of science behind the whole concept of happiness and feeling good, and we've been trying hard, and science has definitely caught up to the research based on happiness and having optimism and finding your why and finding your purpose. Victor Strecker and the whole field and the whole science behind telomeres, we're learning how important it is that our mental well-being is critical. Now, for most of us, we think about that and our day to day goes by, and we kind of passively think about it throughout the day, or we dig in a little bit from time to time. But when all of our lives have been uprooted, it is a monumental opportunity for us to do this. And I'm taken back to, there was one of the most incredible presentations I've ever heard when I was at the National Wellness Institute National Wellness Conference. We had started this whole series called the Legacy Series, and we'd bring people who had been in the field for a while, to come back and give more or less like a graduation type talk, a talk of celebration. So they didn't have to talk about their current research. They didn't have to talk about something that they had built and that they wanted people to pay attention to. They didn't have to talk about some certificate training that they're doing and some new coaching method. They just needed to talk about life. These were always my favorite talks at our conference. We would have amazing keynotes, like, people who are doing incredible work in the field, like Joan Borozinko, and we even had Robert Kennedy Jr. come and do a keynote. None of those could touch some of the legacy talks that I got to hear. But there was one in particular that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And there was a woman named Fern Carnes, who was a registered nurse and had become a real strong voice in the field of wellness, and provided a lot of clinical grounding because of her work as an RN. And she talked a lot about living better. And as she also started battling breast cancer, she really shifted to talking about, how can I live well with disease? And how can I still live well in spite of the fact that my body's breaking down? And that we don't talk about that enough in the field. And that is, and we always talk about wellness as kind of like a young person's game. And we forget that we need to learn how to grow and live and age well and still have vibrancy in our lives, no matter what stage of life we're in. And for her, she was in her 60s and battling breast cancer. And she would go dragon boating and she would go on adventures with the whole idea that this could possibly be her last one. And in fact, she had been battling breast cancer long enough and had been coming back to our wellness conference that she thought it would be great if we changed the legacy talk to the Fern Carnes Memorial Talk given by Fern Carnes, because she just kept battling through cancer. But and I remember being brought to tears, and the last time I did get to hear her talk, because she talked about how important life is in building connections and sharing stories with people. She talked about how important it is to practice empathy, not just talk about it, but be empathetic. And of all people, I mean, she suffered daily. Like, for her to have these at the forefront of her mind had a lot to do with why she lived so long while battling breast cancer. She talked about these things that matter more than any health condition might, you know, and those are pathways to our well-being. And now we're in a world where everyone is stressed. Everyone has conditions that they feel out that they're not within their control, which is the most stressful of conditions. And then we have people have health conditions, and we're worried about how can we manage these in a world that's focused on just those with COVID, and how can we make sure that we're getting the care that we need. And yet, how can we build connection in a world that is 6 feet separated now at all times, or you're in lockdown? And those are things that we need to grow, because at the end of the day, our well-being is more about sharing, caring, connecting, contributing, and exploring our own creativity and purpose. And that is where, that's where I hope we're really going. That's where I hope in all of this, that is where I want us to end up, is that we've become a better human race, and we've had a deeper appreciation of wellness as it pertains to living well, not as lack of sickness, but really living well. So I know that was a really long answer.
I loved it. I was just gonna I was taking notes and letting you roll, because I was like, if I interrupt this stream of conscience, we're never gonna get it back. So a couple of we're gonna go way back to what you were talking about, how this right now it's kind of like thrown everyone's, and I think you were getting at, like, it's thrown our routines off,
Yeah.
both good
It's
and
completely
bad.
disrupted our rhythm. Yeah.
Exactly. So things that we kind of like, and I think I'm gonna be much of what you talked about. I'm gonna bring back to the fitness world and then the educator world, because quite a few of my clients in the fitness space work in the education space. I gotta find my cursor, but so coming back to the idea of how this whole thing is kind of like torn away our routine or just like washed it all away. So I'm seeing a lot of people afraid that these new routines or habits they've, amplified in themselves won't survive through this time period, the lockdown, the quarantine. So from a fitness standpoint, and what I've been telling my coaches is we still need to deliver that product, but we need to so the product being, coaching, the physical fitness, like we still need to deliver that, but make it approachable so people can do it at home without all of the cool flashy things we have at the gym. So that's been like one thing I've been working with both my coaches and our members with is let's focus on those habits, amplifying those habits, the discipline, making sure that workout gets done, making sure you're meal prepping, making sure you're getting out for a walk outside. So all of, making sure we have a daily reminder to do that, a daily call to action. I've been sharing like home workouts. Like one part of it is making sure it's in the living room, no equipment, just body weight, having that available for people, and then getting into the garage gym where I have all the fancy toys, showing people what they can do in there. Super simple, minimum effective dose, because it's always in the back of my mind right now is like how much stress everyone's going through, and I want people to still have that routine of fitness and moving their bodies, but I don't want it to be at the detriment of everything else. Like you're talking about this overarching idea of being well, living well, not just not sick, not diseased, not injured. Like I'm trying to take this global picture to what it is we're offering. And so that's kind of like the routine physical part of it. And then you touched on, the mental component. We have to we're not going to know the damage done or the transformations. I keep dwelling and focusing, and you can call it meditating on myself. So the things I can't control right now are being able to help people at the gym. Like that's my space. I love doing that. So in light of this, what I can't, I'm not able to control that. So I've had to recreate the space in which I'm able to help people through physical movement and the mental change that comes from that. So I'm always being aware of the things I can control and can't control, but instead of dwelling on being afraid of the can't control, it's how can I transform from this? How can I you mentioned creativity at one point. That's so powerful right now for myself, is like how can I change all of the mental and physical routines I had in order to, survive this period of time, but not only survive, but come out of it stronger, more adapted, and be able to. I keep thinking about technology and being able to better utilize technology in the service I provide or the language or the communication I'm delivering. So I guess the three big things I heard from you were the physical routine, and I kind of elaborated on that, what I'm trying to work with both clients and coaches with. And then the mental side of it is being aware of the things I can't control, because if I'm not aware of those, then I think the anxiety from them is constantly there. Whereas if I'm aware of them, but I decide not to let it affect me or not to let it impede me from still taking action, from failing at new things, from learning, and then taking all of that transformation from my physical and the mental things I'm doing, and then the big thing, like you said, is the empathy. So having that discussion with, the members, posting in the Facebook groups, posting on social media, Zoom conversations, like remote meetings face to face with members, either in small groups or one-on-one. Those have been a part of what we're doing, because sharing this story, of like what you and I are going through with others, and then listening to what they have to say. And it's not even so much about you and I being able to give them things to quote unquote work on. It's just hearing them out, listening to them, being there to support them through this crazy time. Because even, you see it on social media all the time, is like people are like, oh, I'm taking a step back from social media. I won't be on it for 30 days. Well, I have a feeling that more people are going to start using Facebook now, because there's, we've being quarantined to social isolation. Like, people are going to be texting more. There's going to be more screen time. So this is allowing us to actually, I think, become more mindful about our tech use, about our screen time, and about how we can better communicate, be empathetic, and have a maybe more wise use of this amazing technology that you and I are podcasting on right now. So that was kind of my thoughts on everything you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there's isn't this Mark Zuckerberg's dream world, where we absolutely need Facebook and social media? You know, it, I, I have, it's one of those things where I think we have to realize that our brains need to shift from a world we used to live in to a world that we're in now. And I don't, I don't think that any return to normalcy is going to feel like life before January, February of this year. I mean, there are going to have to be so many institutional, structural, foundational changes to take care of people and to provide for them. There's also going to be a massive amount of need for mental health and spiritual health. And I don't mean spiritual as in religious or church. I mean, each of us as humans, we have a need for spiritual yearning. We need to be fulfilled. The thing that we'll see how significant it is, and you're talking about it, is that social connection. I mean, part of our human condition is that we're social creatures. So being locked and put away from our friends and coworkers and communities and teams, that that's gonna that's gonna take a toll. But it also, as you've pointed out, I think this provides us such a unparalleled opportunity to change the way that we've behaved online to produce better results. So for example, like you're in your world, in the fitness world, you are trying to create community through putting workouts online that people can follow. Your morning coffee on the mat is a wonderful tool. And the step that you talked about is, how can I build community? So not just post a workout, but how can I build community? And I think that's something every day you're going to learn a little bit more about what people are seeking, wanting, and then your you know your emotional intelligence is going to allow your brain to go there because you care about the people that you work with. And I think I think that is a whole avenue about building community that will be the most important signpost of how we're doing, is how good are these communities of people feeling about things. And that involves understanding that high touch has to happen through technology. And usually we haven't had to worry that much about it because we've always had the ability to have physical touch if we needed it. Online stuff was for sharing and superficial to some degree, but also it was just another avenue for us to communicate. Now it is, for the most part, our only avenue to communicate. And who knows, the stress of that is, we don't know how long this will last, but that doesn't mean that day by day we don't get better. And I think back to all the behavior change work that I do in teaching and work process for people to live better lives involving, behavior change. And I think, you talked about it in terms of amplification, and Tyler sent back from M3 and Corey Huck in their presentation. We talked a little bit about this behavior amplification idea. Now, this is where, if we really want to help people, then we gear as much as we can towards amplifying those best behaviors. So teaching people how to do a workout at home with whatever tools they have, but also letting them know, it's okay if you don't do today's workout, but I think it'd be great if you went for a walk and just explore something, so that your creative mind, your physical health, your emotional health, your stress management are all intertwined in this process. But I think we can really do a lot of good by talking about behavior amplification and highlight and strengthen all those best parts of what each of us can do to get better.
Yeah.
And I feel like we don't have any other choice. Like we're at a precipice of where we've got so many factors working against us. If we feel like we're part of a community of people that are doing this together, again, goes back to Viktor Frankl's quote, if we know our whys, and our whys is because everyone in this community needs each other to be doing this because it helps us and we're all motivated by each other, and we get on a Zoom meeting for a workout and we see there's 27 people, that's more people than show up when we have live workouts, So something is right there. So how are we going to sustain that is going to be the critical part. And that is that we don't forget that these are people, that these aren't just clicks or boxes in a Zoom meeting, but these are people who have needs, wishes, and desires. And in our world of fitness or health and wellness, like that's our game. That's what we're here to do, is to do that. Like, for the organization I work for, I work in healthcare. And so, I work in healthcare. So I'll just start with that. What was missing, and I saw this immediately, was all of our attention, rightfully so, was focused on virus, treatment, testing, care. Okay. However, our organization has 120,000 people that work for it. A lot of those people also work for the system, but are not in healthcare, direct care jobs. And also the people that work in healthcare are going to be completely overworked, stressed. And there wasn't anything within our organization that was speaking to the wellness of that associate who's now displaced at home, or having to care for kids because schools are closed, or having to care for loved ones who are ill and at home, or their parents are at home and can't leave, and so they need groceries dropped off, and start going down the list of everything that someone needs. And us as an organization, we weren't paying attention to that need. So I got my wellness team together and we created an at-home wellness toolkit that we can build and grow every day, with daily wellness tips, with basic exercise tips, with information about mindfulness, meditation, yoga, stretching, about scheduling your day at home, about finding time for your kids, about being able to manage your work-life harmony at home in a completely different environment. And it's been amazing to hear the response, because again, like everything we do, we focus in one direction, and we usually leave the mental, spiritual health piece last. And if that's my lane, then I'm going to fill that lane and make sure that we don't forget that. Because if we let it be last, we're going to have worse problems when all of the testing and treatment and everything gets caught up. We're going to have a bigger problem with the mental health and physical health if it's not for people like you keeping communities together. So I've been amazed at how quickly you've pivoted, and my gym, Fiternal, and James and his coaching team, like the work that they've done, it's heartwarming to see that. And that proves to me empathy is real.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, I want to go way back to the idea of behavior or habit amplification, because for the longest time, I totally stole that from the presentation. So shout out to those guys, because for the longest time I didn't have a word for it. It's something I've been doing, like when I do assessments, when I do onboarding or food journals. As well as I do, everyone comes in and they're like, what do I need to eat? What do I need to do to lose X amount of pounds? They're only concerned with this like mythical end state, the finish line that we both know doesn't really exist. And for me, it's always come back to, well, what are you doing now across the spectrum? So, what does work look like? What does free time look like? What does exercise? What does eating look like? We get all of that on paper for a week, and then we can start to plug into like the moments they're kicking ass. It's like, how do we do more of that? How do we?
Yeah.
Because if I start telling you not to do this or cut away this, we both know as humans we hesitate, right? We're seeing this now with routines, good or bad. We cling to these because we're a pattern-based, a systems-based animal, and these are our protective blankets, right? And the moment I come at you and say you have to stop doing this, it doesn't matter if it's for your benefit or not, you're still going to fight. I mean, like the Surgeon General's warning on packages of cigarettes is a perfect example of that, right? Like you can tell someone, hey, you're probably going to get cancer doing this. They're still going to do it. They're going to double down. Mm-hmm. So if we can instead amplify the behaviors that are, we believe, beneficial, or it doesn't even matter what the research shows. Does that person feel better doing that thing? Yes. Let's do more of that. Does that activity lead to benefits outside of that moment? Yes. Let's do more of that, right? If it's something that delays gratification or helps that person feel better, like long term, we need to do more of that. So the idea of behavior amplification, I loved it. Like I was like, oh yeah, this is that thing. They've just done a damn good job of explaining it. So kudos to those guys. And that right there to me was, what do you want to, proof of admission or ROI? We'll go ROI just for those people listening.
Yeah.
So for me, that was huge. And then taking that into the educators I've been working with, talking with, because teachers don't get into it for the money. Like I think we'll all agree there. They love helping people. They love what it is they do. And so many of them right now are flipped upside down, and they're being forced to create an platform for what it is they do. And just like you and I, we're missing out on that human touch. So that's a big part of it we have to talk about so we can get through it. But the growth that happens from us all having to relearn and reimagine how we deliver what it is we enjoy doing, I think, is a challenge that more people need to embrace during this time. Because talking to these people, I had a conversation this morning. It's like they said it in a great way. It's like, do you believe in your modality, or do you believe in people? And it's 9 times out of 10 they're gonna be like people. well, then you need to change your modality to meet those people. Like if you are if you love what you do and you want to help people, then how you do it needs to change. And that goes back to the, the Viktor Frankl quote you've been talking about is
Mm-hmm.
we we all need to like realize, yes, this is the thing we enjoy doing. This is how we had done it in the past. What can we take from that and then rebuild it in this new environment we found ourselves in? And then what was the third thing you were mentioning? So you talked about behavior amplification. You talked about kind of like the the relearning how we deliver. That's like, oh, the gym's delivering, the online, not only the workouts but the community. Like that's been huge, right? Is how do we latch on and get people involved? And I had a few people reach out to me this morning that don't even go to D1, interested in doing more of the workouts. And so, like you said, more people, like 27 people are logging on for the fraternal morning workout, which is more than the usual morning group. So what is it that we're doing well in this new space? Like we're tripping, we're stumbling, we're trying all these things. Now, as we're doing all of this, we need to take that time to figure out, why are these people, why are they feeling, I don't know, more supported, more listened to? Why are they willing to try this new thing in this scary environment? So it's yeah, a lot of interesting stuff going on right now.
Well, I think you're now. So I think like you and places like Fraternal and CrossFit Stevens Point. I mean, for how many years have basically, and CrossFit has been doing a really good job of this. You talk about your training as a community. You always talk about it as a family. You always talk about it as sharing and caring. And sometimes, you may not really see that or feel that in everyday workout at the gym. I mean, some days are better than others, and but you practice it. So you motivate and you talk to people in a way that you're constantly reminding them you're a family and you're a community. I think you're seeing the benefit of that now. I think that is what's holding people together. And that's the difference between maybe people who go to, like, let's say, and speak specifically about fitness, like all the people that were going to Planet Fitness before, they may be trying to do workouts at home, but I'm not sure. I don't know, but I'm going to guess that they don't feel community like your group feels community. And that is now that's like entrenched in our soul, is to be a part of something. Like, no doubt, part of being human means you want to be part of something. You want to be on teams. You want to be in groups. You want to be part of communities, big or small. Those matter. Those matter to you as much as the physical workout does, and often in most cases. So occasionally you get the Alex Honolds of the world that can free solo El Capitan without any care whatsoever of anyone else in the world. There's not too many of those people out there. So for the most part, we all need each other. So to do what you're doing now and to have as many people want it, I think it's directly a benefit of being talked to in a way that being part of the family is natural to them. And so now you have the opportunity to celebrate that family and get people on. And then as they're working out, like coaches are talking to the screen, and those things matter so much right now, that you're heard and recognized and thanked for doing that. And people at home are thanking you because you help them stay on task with something that's important to them. And again, working through all the modifications and everything that you have to in order to help someone get a workout in. I think we're all willing participants right now to be patient and creative. That's unprecedented. Like, you have the best opportunity right now to really do that with people, and that didn't exist before. Like, you could have been doing online workouts every Sunday up until 2 weeks ago, and you would have gotten probably very few people that would have been, you would have had your diehards, or super fans of D1, or of any group that says, I'm going to do it. But you wouldn't have gotten the massive group of people that are doing it and doing it with their families. Like that is, I think, I think that's something that is so amazing about what's going on now is we can all now be doing all of this stuff with our families, or as we're doing the workout on the screen, like we're sharing back and forth. So thankfully, technology's caught up to that we can do that. But that's that community part that's been preached for so long that it's there. It's we didn't suddenly stop becoming community focused. So we're starved for every avenue we can be community focused right now.
I love it. I love it. With for yourself, I'm curious. What are we've been talking about creativity and learning and failing, growing. What are for like as a coach? What's going on with you right now? What would you normally be doing this time of year, and what have you found yourself doing?
Well, yeah, I I mean, it's it is it's this is our bizarre world, like um I was just in the midst of trying to get ready for a 50-mile run that was coming up in early May. So that was postponed to August. So like I was in the midst of putting in 4 and 5 hour training runs on my weekends, and I don't have to do that now. At least I can modify that a little bit, because now I have to figure out how I'm going to sustain my fitness level for August and keep my fingers crossed that we're in a world where I can do that in August. But as a coach, that's a hard that for me. My personal stuff is a lot easier than thinking about coaching. And for where the only fortunate thing I have right now is the fact that my high school season is in the fall, and so a lot of the prep work and the things that I want my players to be doing, they've been doing, but we usually start getting ramped up in the summer. And so I feel I feel fortunate in that way, because there's a lot of spring season coaches right now that I don't know what they're doing. Like that would be hard. So there's a couple things though that I think this is the great time to do. And I'm doing this with I coach a group of 8 and 7, 8 year old boys right now too. And I've been playing soccer daily with my son and our family, wife and daughter. We've all been out playing more together, and it gives us the chance, so if you think of soccer as a sport, I mean, this is a great opportunity to focus on a lot of things that kids don't take the time to do. So I've been having my son juggle a ball daily just to get touches in, and over a week watching him improve already. So I guess you can look at it two ways, and really is there's a lot of disruption of how you normally would go about things, but there's also a lot of opportunity in focusing on things that you may not have, or you wouldn't have had time for because you were busy going around everywhere. Well, when you don't go everywhere, then it gives you a chance to take a step back. And I think ultimately, like, I hope that's what everyone is doing, is taking a step back and saying, okay, I have this time, I have this space. What do I need to do to be better? Because when it ends, it's going to end, and you don't want to be not better because you didn't have the chance, you didn't take the time to do it. So, um, I don't know if there's no answer to that question. Every day I'm thinking, um, I've been working with my coaches on creating like a book list for our players, and there's tons of ideas we've had that we just didn't do because that environment, it didn't suit. So now we're able to test some new things. You know, I hope that however we're doing it, we're getting to a point soon where people can get together a little bit more in groups so that we can do some more touch and small group work for everything that we're doing. So not just sports, but it would help us in that way.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. I've got two trains of thought, two questions from that. So like for me, I'm not usually like throughout, especially during the week, it's like work, podcast studio, home. Those are like the big three. Sprinkle in grocery store, maybe a coffee shop, a bakery, that kind of stuff. But as someone who works with parents, works with youth, and I see all of the run, like you mentioned, the running around, like you're just so busy, always going somewhere. Now I had this like break from that to.
I think so. I don't have that answer yet, but I think we're going to learn that the pace of life that we've been leading, that's not healthy and sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had a little bit of a different opinion on this, I think, than a lot of people. Like, and especially when I think of sports, and for me, it's soccer and training. The process of practicing it's always been more important than games in the big picture. Like, games are fun, but games are signposts of how much you've been training. And I hope that because we've had a bunch of events canceled and postponed, and there's probably going to be less events moving forward, that we move away from a results focused world to a process focused world. I just think that would be so mentally beneficial for everyone. And I mean, that's the thing that is refreshing is this isn't like a new idea. This isn't a reaction to COVID. It's a result of, but we've been having this debate in the American soccer community for years about we're killing kids with all the tournaments, where we've moved a game from something that takes a massive amount of training and practice into a game focused environment. And we mash in as many games as we can, and we think we've had a good year. And that's not healthy. That's not a healthy environment for kids to fall in love with a sport, get better at it, grow. I mean, I think we can learn that we don't need as many games as we've played, but we sure need more practice and process.
I really like that, Derek. And it feeds directly into my second kind of question, and also just so I've been reading. You and I are both, I think, similar in the regard that we're process focused. We're worried about, or not worried, but our focus is how can we get better at the things we love doing? How can we get better at pursuing our passion? And I've seen articles coming out recently about people saying, well, that's part of the hustle and grind mindset, and that we don't always have to be striving for improvement or self-reflection. Some of these articles are like, oh, we can just survive. We can just be, we don't have to always be looking for this next thing or pushing ourselves. And I found them, at first I was like, what is this? And then I'm trying to do a better job of being empathetic and actually like rereading it and paying attention. And parts of it make sense to me. I get it. For a lot of us, the uncertainty right now is a lot, right? Not everyone has the personality like I do or you have. So I was curious your thoughts on those kinds of ideas or writings as we get deeper into this quarantine.
Yeah, well, I think the hustle life has taken a bit of a hit here.
Right?
So hustling is going to be different, but I think that, and I don't know if this ties into what you read, but I'll just say this, and we can think about it. But I think I think that content was a word that was a hard word for a lot of people. And being content is also I think misunderstood word, because there's sometimes when you say content, someone can say, well, you just sound lazy. Like, oh, so you don't want to try to get better at something. You know, those are conversations I've had when we talk about this, especially like in the wellness field. We talk about these things often, but there is a huge value. You think of contentment as, I've really worked hard and I'm going to enjoy this a little bit more. Or I just achieved something. I'm going to let it sit here for a little bit and be proud of what I've done. And I don't know what's next. I know something will come up, but I'm not going to pressure myself to go grab it right away. I'm going to learn to be a little bit more patient. I'm going to be more, I'm going to value contentment more and not worry so much about the rat race. And, you know, whether that's fueled by fear of missing out or what you see on Instagram feeds for all the amazing things that all the people you don't know or do know are doing, and misinterpreting their snapshot as a perfect life. You know, we've we've talked about this forever, um, too, and especially with uh, the available technology and the way social media works and the algorithms behind it. There's so many different pieces that are um, tagging and clicking our brain through experiences that we haven't always chosen, but they're choosing us because of certain math and whatever. So we end up trying to build these perceptions of what a good life is, and it's not real. And so then we feel like maybe that fuels a lot of what people call the hustle, or the need to one up everything. So if we live in a world where we're constantly one upping, you know, we get lost. And I think that we were living as a society, we were on a fairly unstable and unsustainable path for a lot of things. I don't in any way think that COVID-19 was the way to reset it. Okay. But here we are. It's real and it happens and it's happening, and we all have to do things to get through each day. You know, so if we've learned something from it, it might be that contentment is okay. That it's okay to slow down. It's okay to reflect. It's okay to process. It's okay to not have the answer right now. Maybe you need time to go think about it. You know, maybe we need to think about the whole structure of things in that direction. So, you know, I, I don't, I like I said, you know, early on, like getting through this is the first step. You know, and there will be a whole like one A is figuring out how did we get here. One is we're here, but then what happens after? You know, and how are we going to handle life after? My hope is that it's celebratory. My hope that we've really become better at everything, better together, better at helping, better at understanding, better at processing life, better at not racing through things because we're missing a lot of what we need along the way. You know, so I don't know if that answered the question at all, but I just, as soon as you were talking, I kept thinking about the word contentment.
Yeah. No, I you crushed it, man, as always. Um, my thinking was along similar lines, just wasn't as concise as always. My thoughts are all over the place right now. But no, it's uh you know, these articles I've been reading that, you know, they blend all of these things together, and like you were just expressing, you can want to better yourself, pursue pursue excellence or self-improvement, and still be mindful, patient. You can be content without being lazy or ungrateful. So, no, I
Right.
think did a great job of explaining that. So I was just curious your thoughts on it, because it was a growing number of articles I saw shared by people where they were like, some the like you said, the primary idea is let's get through this, but maybe I'm just an asshole optimistic where I'm like, well, yeah, obviously we want to survive and get through this, but if we're going to live through it, we might as well, you know, learn from it, I
Improve
guess.
through it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
improve
improve
through it.
through it.
Exactly. So, yeah, I was just curious your thoughts.
Yeah.
Well, Derek Bell, we are at an hour. What else? What else do you want to cover before we wrap it up?
Oh
That was like
man,
the fastest hour ever.
that went by pretty quick. I Yeah, I just think you know we could dive back. If we did, we would dive back into the things that we just crossed over. I think we're I think we're early in this sped up evolution of how everything is operating. And so we're we're coalescing resource, we're getting, it's like we're mobilizing to handle something that is directly in front of us. And my job in this is to point the light forward and say, let's look down the road. What kind of people are we? How did we come out of this? And how can we mitigate the scarring now? Because that's that unfortunately, like, it's kind of been how we've done things. We haven't thought about the wellness part of it until it's too late. And
Yeah.
then we and then we and then we regret not having been more mindful when we had the chance to. So I'm I'm out here screaming at the top of my lungs about it, like, hey, see, wellness, this is what we're talking about. Wellness matters, and all these conversations that we've been having, and they're rising to the top. It's been interesting. Like, I was out on the green circle yesterday and thinking about life. And
You step in any more dog poop?
no, I went on a clean area where people must have had their poop bags. So I'm really grateful for that. But I was thinking, like, and I don't know, on a few of these Highway to Well podcasts, like, these are things we've been talking about, how do we live better? So, and that can be in different ways. Everyone comes at it differently. And you and I have talked, and you talk about it all the time. And the people I've had on are from different areas and backgrounds, but there's this common thread. Like, there's this common thread of, if we can be more empathetic, if we can build tighter, stronger, more significant connections, and if we can build efficacy, our self-efficacy, so we feel good about the things we do. So that goes back to that behavior amplification. Like, what do we do that makes us feel good? Do more of that. And if we just kind of, like, focus on each of those as we're getting through the world, then we might come out better. And I think that's my hope.
I like it, man. I like it. I think that's a good place to end. And I think what we need to make it our we've been running circles around the topic of living better through this. So I think we should make it a mission, either this week, late this week, or early next week. We come back, revisit this with a new guest, and we try to do that as often. I shouldn't say that because that's vague, but I'm going to say that for right now. as often as possible during this quarantine. What are your thoughts?
That sounds perfect. Let's do it.
Perfect. All right, we'll
I'm
brainstorm a
your
little
guy.
bit. We'll brainstorm a little bit off air, but for everyone listening, thanks for listening. Hope it helped a little.
Thank you.
Bam. All right, see everybody later.
Thanks, Bill.